This video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you need a website or domain, check out squarespace.com. Hey everybody, and welcome to a new video. 5 years ago, some people thought phone cameras were going to make dedicated cameras obsolete. And today, phone cameras are better than ever, but camera companies are still selling lots of cameras, with sales rising. Phone cameras are getting smarter. They can even fake blurry backgrounds and remove unwanted objects with a tap. And yet, I still carry a dedicated camera almost every day, as most professionals do. So why is that? Is it just because I'm a professional photographer? Or are there still limitations that even the best phone cameras simply can't do? In this video, I'll go over the reasons why a photographer who's been using a phone camera might want to buy a dedicated camera. My name is Simon d'Entremont, and I'm a professional nature and wildlife photographer living in Eastern Canada. I make weekly videos giving you photo tips or taking you behind the scenes for nature photography. Subscribe if you want to see more. Now, before we get into the limitations of phone cameras, let's acknowledge something. For convenience, they're great. They're always with you, and I'm not a camera phone hater. Use what you have, and anyone is welcome into the photography community. So I'm not one of those, that's not a real camera or you're not a real photographer types. My look at this is based on real science, not snobby views. Phone cameras take good images in good light. They automatically process images and they're convenient. And for many people, that's what they're looking for. Now, because of this, phone cameras really took a bite out of interchangeable lens cameras from 2015 to 2021. Without looking at it more carefully, one might say that phone cameras were on pace to replace, for lack of a better word, real cameras. But since then, sales of interchangeable lens cameras has been steadily rising. What's going on here? First, a large part of the camera market 10 years ago would have been selling cameras to everybody, but a large part of that market was for point-and-shoot cameras, entry-level DSLRs, travel cameras, and bridge cameras. So phone cameras replaced some of that market. So phones replaced snapshots, they didn't replace photography. Second, the people who remained were serious hobbyists, creators, sports and wildlife photographers, landscape photographers, and professionals. In other words, the people whose photography ambitions exceeded what a phone could do. And for these people, the new market for interchangeable lens cameras was still important. Also, this group hasn't gone away and is actually growing. Third, this new market appreciates new features like amazing eye detection, autofocus, great sports and action capability, lots of lens choices, and better video. And that's what cameras today are delivering. They're better than ever, attracting new entrants. Fourth, content creation as a hobby or profession has exploded, and features like flippy screens and mic jacks on cameras have become valuable tools which more advanced cameras provide. And fifth, phone cameras in their abundance has created a feeder pool of new entrants into photography. People who've played around with their phone cameras have answered the question, how do I take a photo? And are now asking themselves, how do I take the photo I want? And may find that the limitations in their phone cameras compared to achieving their photography goals. So these are the source of growth and sales of dedicated cameras, as you can see over the last few years. They want to graduate to the next level. So if you find yourself running into these limitations, it might be time to consider a dedicated camera. Now let's look at what they might help deliver for you. The first limitation is long distance photography. Phones don't really have long lenses, and often the 3x or 5x mode is actually just digital cropping, which reduces image quality and magnifies any noise in the image. It also often uses very small sensors, which have less resolving power. Even phones with telephoto lenses are tiny compared to 100 to 400 or 600 millimeter lens. Have a look at the light gathering and magnification difference between a telephoto lens and a deep optical crop. If your child scores a goal from the other side of a soccer field or an eagle lands on a distant tree, your phone simply can't get close enough. Dedicated cameras allow you to use it with dedicated telephoto lenses that can capture way more detail. This isn't a technology or company problem, it's just science. The resolving power of a lens is its ability to see fine detail, and the larger the aperture, the greater the potential resolving power, which means that a lens can distinguish smaller details in a distant subject. Let's compare my big 600mm lens, 100 to 400mm lens, and a camera lens in terms of its resolving power. This leads to photographers, even amateurs, using dedicated cameras for wildlife, sports, or action photography, as there isn't really a debate as to which camera can do the best. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Squarespace. I built my own website using Squarespace and it was a breeze. A website is just a great way to have a professional place online where you can show off your work, your service, or your personal brand. Social media are often showing you or your work in short clips or thumbnail photos and makes it difficult to monetize as they may not want links to external sites. There are lots of useful templates, including ones for specific genres like photography, which is mine for example. Or if you're more daring and artistic, you can go outside the templates using the new AI feature called Squarespace Blueprint to help you personally curate your own build. It works you right through the process. A website is also a great way to monetize your work by setting up an online store so you can take payments by credit card or PayPal from all over the world. And now with a new added feature of buy now and pay later with ClearPay and Afterpay. Go to squarespace.com to sign up for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Simon for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. When it comes to low light photography, this is another where physics wins. Small sensors collect less light, and in a phone, sensors may be as small as 5 by 3 millimeters on the zoom lens, whereas dedicated cameras often have sensors at 16 by 24 millimeters or 24 by 36. That last one is 50 times larger than the sensor on the 120 millimeter lens on my phone camera. Now, phones will often use computational photography techniques to try and make up for the shortfall, which is usually lots of noise and poor colors. One technique is photo stacking. That's taking hundreds or dozens of photos and digitally stacking them to average out the noise and simulate a long exposure. That can work decently when the subject isn't moving. Another is to use AI to add back details that are expected but not captured, like fur, leaves, faces, and buildings. One weakness is that starts to become as much digital art as photography. Now, there are stories online, which I verified were true, of people taking photos of low-resolution pictures of the moon, for example, with little detail, and then the photo shows way more detail than the original. But with my big 600mm lens, I can take photos of the moon like this. I'm not trying to disparage the phone or its makers, it's just physics. Now, another area that's just physics is blurring out the background. A look in photography that's not necessary for top-level images, but is still prized because of its ability to look, to quote an overused word, cinematic, but is still prized in genres like portraiture. Cameras create blur optically using what's called a thin depth of field. That is a thin plane in focus, making the background soft and creates nice, what we call bokeh. Most people don't know why the camera photo looks better, but they can see it immediately. And even if a phone camera lens has a quick f1.8 ratio and the dedicated camera has the same f1.8, you won't get the same blur. That's because the aperture, the actual opening of the lens, is tiny, maybe 3 millimeters, whereas it's 82 millimeters on this one. The wider lens opening is what blurs the background, and as we saw earlier, the phone camera lens is very tiny. Now, recently, camera manufacturers have tried to equalize this by adding what's called a portrait mode for the camera, which is digitally blurring the background to try to get the same look. While some attempts may work, often there are imperfections and artifacts that remain, such that on social media might not notice, but for higher end work, professional work like weddings and as well as printing, this wouldn't pass many people's quality test. Another area where you might outgrow your phone's capability is in shooting fast action. A phone is usually optimized for snapshots, one click at a time type of situation, which is very convenient for the occasional snap. They have decent processing power for processing photos and computational photography, but much less for storage, heat management, and the battery drain created by large numbers of files at once. When I have my phone set to its highest quality photo in RAW format, I can only get one photo every 2 seconds, while a modern dedicated camera can shoot 20, 30, or 40 frames per second, some even in RAW, while continuously tracking. So for genres like sports, kids on skateboards, wildlife, or motorsports photography, the ability to get lots of shots in fast succession make them important in these types of photography. Another variable is creative control. Phones are designed to make decisions for you, to make them easy to use, which is part of their appeal. But it may be difficult to creatively control the variables that go into making a shot look unique. Long exposures for dark Milky Way photos, blurring water and waterfalls, getting up really close and focusing, or manipulating the depth of field are all ways that advanced photographers make art that looks unique. While some third-party software can help you actually control the settings of your phone cameras, most people don't use them. And if you did, most cameras still use fixed aperture lenses, for example, although that's starting to change. So not all the variables are able to be managed independently. So the difference between taking a photo and making a photo is often creative control. And for the dedicated camera, it often has more options for that type of control and uniqueness. Next is image quality. Phone images often look great immediately in camera because they're heavily processed and easy to use. This is indeed handy. On the other hand, camera raw files often contain much more information than phone images, even phone images in the higher end file types like HEIF. The larger sensors often give the photos more dynamic range so that bright brights and dark darks can more easily be recovered. So if you like shooting sunrises and sunsets or contrasty scenes, the larger sensor on a dedicated camera will become an advantage, saving your blown out skies and overly dark scenes. Also, if you enjoy editing photos, a dedicated camera gives you far more flexibility to play with your files later and get the types of look that you like. But it does require effort on your part. Next is content creation. And you may say, but I'm a photographer, I don't create content, don't shoot video. The reality is if you want to promote your photography, platforms like Instagram will favor showing you creating your work as much as showing off your work. So knowing video and how to use it can be very helpful. Now, while phones can indeed be used to create video and photo content, dedicated cameras with flippy screens and dedicated mic jacks are easy to use and have full features like adjustable brightness and audio levels and allow ND filters for great looking video. These can make great looking content and a higher quality product, as people using the front facing camera on their phone are usually using a lower quality camera compared to the one on the back of the phone. And finally, there's something special about the experience of intentional photography. This isn't about image quality anymore, it's about enjoying the process. A guitar doesn't make someone a musician, and a paintbrush doesn't make someone an artist, and a camera doesn't make someone a photographer. But the right tool can make the process more enjoyable. That's why the longer I've been doing photography, the higher in my camera criteria rises the feel in the hand. What is it like to use? Do I enjoy the physical controls and the live intention of creating photos rather than documenting what I've seen with a click? Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. But for me, the photographic process is one I enjoy, and having a camera in hand that I know how to use really well inside and out is part of that process. So is it time to buy a real camera? If your phone is doing everything you need, then maybe not. But if you've ever wished you could zoom in further, shoot in darker conditions, blur the background naturally, capture fast action, print your work, or do professional work, then yes, you may have reached the limits of what a phone can do. Then that's the time to think about getting a dedicated camera. And you don't need to start with a huge professional rig like I do. Even a modest new mirrorless camera can deliver many of the differences that we've talked about. And don't forget that while phones make one think about cameras and lenses as one thing, in dedicated cameras, a lot of the benefit comes from the dedicated lenses. To learn more about lenses, see my video right here, and I hope you can use these tips soon to make sure you get the gear that's right for you, and I also hope that you can come home soon with your own unique and amazing photos. I know you can do it.